episode. This week, gentlemen, the name on the marquee has got to be Vicente Luque, who this past weekend at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, defeated the living legend Rafael dos Anjos by a unanimous decision. The scorecards read 49-46, 48-47, and 48-47. All three judges for Luque. Mark, let's start with you. Give us your take and your impression of this signature win by Vicente Luque over the always tough, always dangerous legend in RDA.
So first off, I am a little bit pissed to say that I did not get a chance to rewatch this fight. I always try to rewatch these fights that come down to scoring for you guys. But as we were mentioning in the beginning of this show, we've had a bit of a crazy week. I've had a bit of a crazy week, I should say, and I couldn't find the time. And I really wanted to because I do think this fight was interesting to score, even though it felt like a Luque win, because I think rounds 2 and 4 were certainly Vicente Luque rounds. And live, I did think he won the fight. But I really thought all three of 1, 3, 5 were close enough that I was like, man, I kind of want to watch that again and just see how I would score them. And then I see on MMA Decisions, there's a good chunk of people scoring these rounds for RDA. So I'm really curious to do a rewatch, and I do apologize to those listening that I didn't get to do that. But with all that said, this really was an interesting fight. First off, RDA just always hangs. Like, even when he's up at welterweight against killers like Luque, like, not saying he can't be finished, because obviously we've seen, Fiziev do that. Eddie did it back in the day. Granted, he rarely does get finished. But no one is ever outclassing RDA. He hangs with anyone and everyone. He's just so well-rounded. He's so comfortable in the fight. And he showed that again here against a bigger, stronger, more powerful guy in Luque. And as for Luque, to come back and fight the way that he did when he wasn't sure if he was ever even going to fight again, thanks to a brain hemorrhage, is unbelievable. It was probably the best defensive wrestling and defensive grappling that we've ever seen from Vicente Luque, and offensive wrestling and grappling, for that matter. I don't know why I'm only saying defensive, because there was quite a bit of offense as well in that area. The arm drag that DC was raving about in round 3 was a real shining moment for Luque. I loved that too. You could point to the Chiesa fight for him where he was really slick in the grappling too, but that was a lot quicker. This was like a true sustained effort out of him for 25 minutes, committed to wrestling and grappling. And I think it was a statement from him about the way that he's working to improve his own game and become a more well-rounded threat. Like, he got beat by Bilal in that area. Against Jeff Neal, he was losing on the feet. He didn't really have a way to change the fight. So I think he consciously tried to work on that part of his game and tried to lean on it here. And he did well. So, as I said, I do want to rewatch this. I still think I will. Maybe I'll have a comment as we open the show next week. But regardless of that, this was a strong performance from Vicente Luque, a big way for him to bounce back after a couple losses. And it may not have been the game plan we expected, but he basically beat RDA at his own game, which says a lot.
Okay, Omar, let's bring you in here. Give us your take of, what were the key to victories for Vicente Luque in getting this win over RDA?
Well, I mean, RDA is the type of guy that has that championship experience, and I think the thing that I love about RDA the most is how he can kind of weather the odds, right? Like, Vicente Luque looked bigger than RDA, almost not thicker, but bigger, just generally. And I think you could see the size played a certain factor when it came to the grappling in that fight as well. But RDA knows how to fight, right? Like, he knows how to put things together. He knows the fight IQ that RDA has in order to try to win rounds, I think, is pretty high. But Luque was no slouch, man. He's just as good on the ground, I think, he is on the feet, and he is a killer on the feet. RDA is just really good, and I think that if RDA went back down to 155, I think he would be able to do more damage than he would at 170, and that's saying a lot because he's still very good at 170 pounds. I was impressed by the fight overall. I also think that round 3 for me was the toss-up round. I think 2 and 4 go to Luque, and I thought 1 and 5 went to RDA. But it was a close fight. It was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be honest. I thought the size and the power difference from Luque would have played a lot more into the result. But RDA did work, man. It was a great performance on both of them.
It was interesting to see RDA kind of get RDA'd. I mean, down at lightweight, I feel like this is the kind of fight that RDA would usually kind of execute on his opponents at 155. But now, being only 5'8" at 170 pounds seems to be a bit of a disadvantage for RDA, especially at this stage, later stage in his career, against a guy in Vicente Luque, who is officially listed at, I believe, 5'10" or 5'11". Yeah, to your point, he just seemed like the bigger guy. It's weird to see somebody who seems stronger than RDA in the ring, because, again, especially at lightweight, he always seemed like he had the strength advantage. Like, he would just kind of dad dudes in the cage, and it seems to be that's what he tasted this past weekend. So let's talk about Vicente Luque now, where he could go from here. He's back in the win column after dropping 2 fights in a row to Bilal Muhammad and Jeff Neal. His record now stands at 22-9, and it needs to be mentioned that he is 2-0. He's batting 1,000 when facing former UFC champions, now with wins over both Tyron Woodley and RDA. So, Mark, what do you think is next for Vicente Luque? Put on your UFC matchmaker hat. Who would you match him up with next?
I don't know where exactly to go with him, to be honest. There's no one above him currently that really makes a ton of sense, other than the man who's only one spot above, which is Sean Brady. Also, it's so dumb that he's ranked above Vicente Luque, but I digress, and I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. So, yeah, maybe you can go Luque versus Brady. I don't know when Brady's back exactly. Either that, or maybe you end up using Luque as the next step up for that newly booked Kevin Holland versus Jack Della Maddalena fight.
Okay, like it. Omar, any other ideas?
Are you talking about like him getting the winner of Jack Della Maddalena, Kevin Holland, or the loser, or?
Oh, did I leave it? I thought I said the next step up for the winner of that fight. Did I not say that? My bad.
Yeah, maybe I didn't understand it. Yeah, I mean what was the first one that you said there? The Sean Brady one was the one that I had in my head, and I don't know what's going on with Sean Brady. I'm not really sure what his update is, but there's just so much stagnation in the welterweight division right now, and I think eventually things will start to clear up, especially once all these fights end up happening before the end of the year. But as of right now, Sean Brady's just kind of the one that makes sense. I doubt that'll be the case in the next four months or so.
Also, I stand corrected. He did lose against Leon Edwards, but I did say, to be fair, I did say former champions, and Leon Edwards was not a champion when he lost to Leon Edwards, so I'm still right.
That's correct.
Let's talk about RDA. RDA, he's a welterweight now. He's probably among the smallest welterweights in the division. He's also 38 years old, and his record stands at 32-15. He's back in the loss column. He's been sort of pinballing back and forth between loss, win, loss, win, loss. Omar, let me start with you this time. Do you see RDA sticking around 170? And if so, who would you want to see him fight next?
Honestly, I'm not really sure what his motivation is at this point, because if he's trying to go for a belt, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So if he's here for a paycheck and just to kind of keep active and keep looking good and, kind of whatever happens, I would think a fight between him and Randy Brown could be very interesting at this point in both of their careers. I would be very down for that.
Like it. Mark, any other bright ideas for RDA?
So he did say when he came back up to welterweight that he was realizing he was getting older and that maybe he was not going to be a champion again, and that he just wanted to not be cutting the weight and kind of have funner type fights. So he did seem to accept that. So I think he probably stays up at welterweight. I don't see why he would go back down. So yeah, he's hard too, because I really wanted to find another veteran to be put these two near legendary guys across the cage from each other, but there's no one that really fits that bill at welterweight that he should be fighting right now. So instead, I was just thinking maybe now he's the one that gets Michelle Pereira, since the Wonder Boy fight fell apart, or even a Li Jingliang. I think he's going to kind of just be this guy now where he fights guys like Pereira or the Leech who are trying to break through, and they got to show they can beat an RDA.
Wow, I feel like Pereira would just tower over him, man.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Luque looked bigger, but Pereira's Pereira's like 6'2"? Michel Pereira?
No, I don't think he's that tall.
You don't think he's 6'2"? He seems like such a giant at welterweight.
Like he's like around there.
I mean, as of late,
6'1",
he can't even make welterweight lately. So my man's middleweight. Yeah, the last wins for RDA were Brian Barberena at welterweight. He submitted him, and then Hanata Moicano, which was a catch weight I'm seeing at 160, which makes me think, is RDA one of those guys who will go down as like could have been a fantastic 165er?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, he got screwed for sure.
Yep.
And for that matter, so did Kevin Lee. I think Kevin Lee would have been a great 165 pounder.
Totally.
Yep.
Totally.
He's one of the poster boys for that division.
For sure.
Division.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you guys want to say about either of these two Brasileiros before we move on?
No, sir.
Okay. In the co-main event. Oh, no. We're talking about. Yeah, let's talk about the co-main. Co-main event in the featherweight division. Excuse me. I was just excited to talk about my man Khalil Rountree. I jumped the gun. Let's talk about the co-main featherweight division. Cub Swanson defeats Hakeem Dawodu by a unanimous decision, 29-28 on all three of the judges' scorecards. Omar, give us your take at the fight and the keys to victory for Mr. Cub Swanson.
So I caught live the end of this fight. I think I caught the end of round 2 and then round 3. And for round 3, I thought Cub Swanson won round 3, personally. So I was like, oh, Cub Swanson's going to win this fight. He wins the fight. And I was like, all right, cool. And people apparently had tons of issues. So I went back and I watched the fight. And I'm not really on board that this is a robbery, in my opinion. I think it was a close fight. And partially, I think that's the problem, right? Is that there was a lot of dead time in that fight. There was a lot of waiting, a lot of sort of sizing them up, but for an extended period of time. And this kind of happened throughout the entire fight. And Hakeem Dawodu kind of relied on a lot of his counters and things like that. But, you know, Cub Swanson looked like the more active fighter. There was a lot of things that were in play there that I really thought I could see why a judge would potentially give him this round. At no point, and I think that this, for me, considering the situation, I actually put more of the onus on Hakeem Dawodu. Like, I think he had a lot more responsibility considering how the momentum of that fight was going to push the pace a little bit, to push the aggression, to sort of make sure that he swung that momentum in his favor, because a lot of that fight was a pendulum going back and forth between different sequences that were happening, different people that were getting better positions at one another, different shots that were landing between one another. And it's all well and good where we can look back and look at the stats and things like that, but the way that fight played out, it was a very difficult fight to score. And I think Hakeem Dawodu didn't do himself any favors fighting the fight the way that he did. And to be fair, neither did Cub Swanson, because Cub Swanson didn't really fight that fight very smart. He didn't really put everything together as far as his takedowns were concerned. You saw how quick he was able to get that takedown, I think, in round 3, but he never utilized it throughout the entire fight. And his striking, as you know, loose as it is and how good he can be, didn't really seem very efficient. Didn't really seem like he had found a comfort in there against Hakeem Dawodu. I think he got countered a lot throughout that fight, and I think it just threw him off. And I think he kind of bum rushed his way in, hoping for the best. Mm-hmm. But it was a good fight that I think both guys had opportunities to be better and take control of that fight 100% without people having to wonder who won this round, who won that round. But
Mark, oh, sorry, you're not done.
Yo, you're good.
Mark, what do you think?
I'm happy to hear Omar say that he didn't think it was a robbery, because I didn't think so either. Firstly, I'm 0% surprised that Hakeem Dawodu finds himself in this situation, because as I said last week, he always finds a way to make his fights closer than they should be. And you could say the same thing here. He was clearly, from jump, the much faster man. and he couldn't make it mean enough to win a clear decision. And as for the decision, I really don't have a big issue with it. I think it comes down to round 1, and I think that round was basically a toss-up. On the rewatch, I did say, all right, maybe Hakeem just edged it, but if you scored that for Cub, especially live without the ability to rewatch it like I had, I really cannot argue with you at all. And then the second, Dawodu took pretty clearly. He did some nice work in the clinch. Granted, Cub ended it with that really nice flurry late, but I think it was still Hakeem's round. And then Cub took the third, to give himself a shot on the cards, not knowing which way round 1 went, and he got rewarded for it. So to me, it was just a close fight with no clear winner. I think the story was that Cub's experience in the fire paid off in that he was comfortable in the exchanges and able to use his odd timing to create openings for himself to score. And unfortunately, on the other side, that the Hakeem narrative continues, at least somewhat, in that he fails to pull away in fights where it feels like he could have pulled away. So it goes Cubs' way this time, and the man is still chugging along.
So Cub Swanson is back in the win column after that nasty leg kick TKO against Jonathan Martinez back in last October. Back in the win column. I mean, I feel like Cub Swanson doesn't have much to prove at this point in his career. He is 39 years old. He has fought a who's who at bantamweight and featherweight. And but like RDA, he's kind of been ping-ponging back and forth between losses and wins lately. So I don't see a title run in his future. But Mark, give me the idea of who do you think he should match up with next?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what is a fun fight for Cub at this point in time, and I'm actually going to undo one of the fights that I suggested last week. I had said then that I thought a good next opponent for Diego Lopez would have been Billy Quarantillo, but I think I got to find something else for Lopez to do, because as I thought about this one, I was like, man, Cub Swanson fighting Billy Quarantillo would be really, really fun. So that's where I'm going to go.
Omar, what about you?
Honestly, I kind of like the Billy Quarantillo pick. I don't really see how you can do something other than that, considering it's out there in the air now.
Cub Swanson's his longest winning streak in the UFC was 6 wins in a row. He at one point did have a 4-fight losing skid where he lost to Brian Ortega, Frankie, Renato Moicano, and Shane Burgos. But now he's back to the win column. Yeah, man.
I think I don't remember that happening.
Let's talk quickly about Hakeem Dawodu. Now, the first time in his professional career where he has lost back-to-back fights. Omar, what would you do next with Dawodu if you were the matchmaker?
Let's kick it over to Mark first, actually, because I don't have this page up.
Okay.
I scanned looking for someone who I feel like is so crazy that they would force Hakeem Dawodu to have to open up. And for that reason, I am going to go with the wild man that is Joe Anderson Brito.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a great pick.
I would say let's give him Damon Jackson. Damon Jackson's probably another one of those guys where he's not going to have the opportunity to just sit there and wait. Damon Jackson's going to be coming for his throat for 3 rounds. So give him Damon Jackson.
What I love about that Brito pick is that that is Mark showing such a high level of MMA knowledge that he's plays with the dials like a wine sommelier, that he knows like what kind of opponent will bring out what flavors of Hakeem Dawodu. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
That's why you tune into this shit, people.
I appreciate that compliment.
That's why you tune into this shit. God damn it. By the way, looking at Hakeem Dawodu's record, he has a win in what was his 3rd pro bout over one Mike Malott. He fought Mike Malott at World Series of Fighting 14, what is now PFL, in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Mike Malott fought at 145 pounds in the beginning of his career.
Wow.
And
or was it at 155?
It might have been lightweight. I think it was featherweight.
Wow.
Yeah, Mike Malott is a big guy. That's crazy.
It was at featherweight. You're right. Wow.
And Hakeem Dawodu finished him. He TKO'd him.
Yeah. Dude, Hakeem Dawodu is good. Like, he Why am I blanking? He beat Julio Arce, who I rate. He beat Zubair Tukhugov, who's now out of the UFC, but he's a solid fighter. Like, the dude has skills. He's just like, he can't. I don't know. He can't get himself up another level when, to the eye test, he should be up another level.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. UFC Fight Night at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. In the light heavyweight division, Khalil Rountree Jr.
Fuck yeah.
Says to Chris Daukaus. Says, sorry, buddy, have to spoil your light heavyweight debut. Khalil Rountree scores the TKO victory over Chris Daukaus at 2 minutes and 40 seconds of the very first round. Just great stuff from Khalil Rountree. Mark, let's start with you this time. Give us your take of how this fight played out and how it ultimately finished with Khalil Rountree getting his hand raised.
Finally, Khalil is rolling, man. And we all always felt like he had this in him to become this guy who can kind of just mow people down and put a run together. And he always found, ways to slip up, lose to the Marcin Pracnios of the world, which you think about and you're like, how did he even manage that? But he's finally putting it together, man. This is the best form we've seen from Khalil. He's won 4 in a row now. Everything really looks sharp. And I don't know that he's reached the level of being like a true title contender. I'm not sure we've made it that far, but I think we're probably going to get a real good gauge of that in like his next fight now, whoever it may be. Because he's hitting like that top 10 matchup type level, and he is really looking fantastic. And he was great here. He was poised. He was patient. And Daukaus still did look pretty fast. His speed translated even down at 205. He landed a few clean rights on Khalil. We even saw him look to wrestle, which was interesting. But Khalil defended the takedown well. He took the shots well. He didn't rush anything, and he just waited for his spot, and he found it. He led with a big straight left as he stepped back into range. Daukaus got caught flush, and then Khalil was throwing some angry-looking shots in the follow-up on the ground, but a great finish for Khalil and a big win.
Omar, you're a Muay Thai guy. Khalil Rountree is a Muay Thai guy. I mean, my man moved to Thailand to gain a huge proficiency in the art of 8 limbs, and it shows. Although it's not like he used some crazy Muay Thai technique. I think he just landed like a clean left straight on Chris Daukaus, which sat him down, and then he ultimately finished the fight with violence on the ground. But give us your take on some of the techniques that Khalil Rountree was employing in this win.
Yeah, it's actually a lot deeper than that, to be honest, man. He was setting a lot of that up for a while. He's such a fucking strong dude. Like, there are not a ton of guys who can get away with the stuff that he does the way that he does it. So if you're watching that fight, you'll notice that he's like aggressively smashing this dude's hand out of the way, right?
Yeah, what was that about?
So a lot of times you can do that. That is a technique in Muay Thai because it gets the hand out of the way, and you can follow up with a cross. You can follow up with a lot of different things. But more than that, I think at this point, Khalil was really programming Daukaus at that point, right? Programming him to respond to the left hand, programming to respond to, you need to do something with this side when I come for it, because otherwise I'm going to knock you, I'm going to punch you, whatever. And we had gotten to a point after a few exchanges that he ended up faking the actual hand and coming over the top with the left hand behind it. And it was a really beautiful combination all in all, and especially the way that he was able to set it up slowly. He still took a few shots throughout that fight as well. I don't think anything landed super, super clean against Khalil Rountree, but that dude is fucking terrifying. I'm going to tell you right now, that dude is absolutely terrifying. There is something about his, and a lot of Muay Thai guys have this, which is why I think wrestlers die for a fight with a Muay Thai guy, because Muay Thai guys have their legs like square and are just stomping forward. I'm just coming forward, and you're not going to do anything about it. And when you try to, I'm going to punch you in the throat, and I'm going to keep coming forward. And, for a wrestler, they're going to dive under. They're going to try to time that. They're going to go under and try to go for a takedown and stuff like that. But for guys like Daukaus, who might not be comfortable doing that, who think that they have the striking to stand up to, to a guy who is that comfortable using that, those types of techniques, it's a rough day for that boy. And it definitely was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're making me think of that clip that made the round somewhat recently of Paddy Pimblett talking about Muay Thai and how pure Muay Thai really
It's
is not
different.
seen in much in MMA because it's just you go up against any wrestler and the stance is just not made for MMA. The
100%.
minute you go up against someone, not even a pure wrestler, but just anybody who knows how to wrestle in MMA, your legs are too. What did he say? You're too upright. Your legs are too close together. You're
Yeah.
just begging to be taken down.
Yeah, because the whole thing is, and this would be like any kind of tackle, right? Even if you're talking about football or anything like that, the main objective really is to get your hands either behind the knees or at the very minimum under the butt, and then kind of pull in or toss up, whatever the hell you want to do. But the idea is to break that center of gravity, have that
Right.
above the area where you're grabbing onto. And with Muay Thai, in traditional Muay Thai, the kicks can't come from that far back because it telegraphs, and so you're gonna show exactly what you're doing if your kicks are coming from too far back, if your stance is too wide. Not to mention, in Muay Thai there are leg kicks galore, and not to say that there aren't in MMA, but leg kicks don't happen nearly as often in MMA as they do in Muay Thai. A leg kick is almost used just as frequently as a jab is used when it comes to Muay Thai. So leg placement is generally very square, usually under the hips, maybe shifted off just a little bit. Front of the weight is generally all on the ball of your foot. So there's not a lot of heel action. There's not a lot of complete weight put down on the feet most of the time. Generally with leg kicks a little bit, generally with shovel hooks to the body and body shots in general. But overall, the leg placement is like candy to a baby for a wrestler. If you can get a knee off fast enough when a wrestler shoots in on you, God bless you. Other than that, you're probably going to be screwed.
For sure. Yeah, what strikes me about Khalil Rountree is, and this is just his Muay Thai, I think, prowess, is his calm in a fight against other light heavyweights, against other big dudes, and he's just so calm against other killers. I wonder if his like scary strength and scary power partly comes from when he was very overweight at one point in his life.
Yeah, I think so.
He has that like
probably fair.
that like heavy guy, like obese guy strength. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't want to say anything too insensitive to people out there who are listening, but
Well, whatever he did, he looks like a fucking specimen now. 'Cause
he is, bro.
He's jacked to hell.
I mean, sometimes heavy dudes can be like stupid strong because they're basically carrying around like a bodysuit 24/7.
Yeah.
And they actually have like a ton of muscle under there.
The technique, though, it's a night and day difference when he went. Like you could mark on the calendar based on his performances when that dude went to Thailand, because it was a night and day difference.
Yeah.
And he's literally just getting better. Like not as a critique, but he looks so tense and so like tightened up when he fights. That's not generally like I like to be a lot looser when I move so that I'm just not using or expending as much energy, because that shit will wear on you, just kind of having your hands up and just moving around, especially if you're that tight. And like if you look at Rountree, he's like the man took like 2 shots of pre-workout. Like he's in it. I would love to see him be a little bit more loosey-goosey. That way, especially if he's talking about having a 5-round fight and stuff like that, I doubt he's going to have that kind of like tension for
I thought
5 rounds.
Same exact thing. That's funny. It didn't hit me until you just mentioned the 5 rounds. But when he said the 5 rounds, my brain went exactly to, man, he can't be squeezing everything for 5 rounds or he's not going to make it. That's funny.
Yeah, dude. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that it will gas you, and it'll gas you a lot quicker than 5 rounds for sure. So that would be like my one little like tidbit about the fantastic performance that Khalil Rountree had. I don't want to take anything away from him because he was absolutely fantastic. But that's just one thing I took away from it, that hopefully he gets feedback on and figures that out, especially before he gets put on a main card or a main event or something along those lines when it really, really, really matters.
Well, segueing off that, speaking of 5 rounds, I'm at a point where I would love to see this guy, and maybe this is the fan in me talking. I would love to see this guy in maybe a fight night main event or headlining, a fight night at the Apex or something like that, because he's at a point, he's gotten his skill set to a point where this man is a must watch for an MMA fan. I feel he is guaranteed violence. He has finished 3 of his last 4 opponents, all by knockout, all with just vicious stand-up technique, and it's great stuff. I think he deserves it. That being said, who do you guys think that he could possibly match up with next at light heavyweight? Omar, do you have any ideas?
I do. So there's a set of fights that I think would be interesting depending on who loses those fights. So the first one is more bullish than the other, if we're being honest, but I think the first one I had that's a little bit more, I think, reasonable would be the loser of Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann. That's going down in just a few weeks.
Let's go. Yeah, man.
I think that either one I think would be a good fight. Roundtree's never fought either one, or did he fight Spann?
Nope.
Neither one, right? Nope. The other one I had was a little bit more bullish, but I wanted to see him against the loser of Johnny Walker and Magomed Ankalaev. He has fought Johnny Walker before. He lost to Johnny Walker, if I remember that right, but that was like back in 2017, 2018, something like that. So it's been more than enough time for them to run it back, especially at this point where they're at the top of the division. So I think that'd be interesting to see who comes out of that alive.
Mark, by the way, it's worth noting this ties his own longest win streak of his career. He won his first 4 pro bouts, and it's the first time he's won 4 since then.
There you go.
So your thoughts of his next matchup?
In the same place, the first one that Omar said. I think that as far as the main event, I know he asked for it. I think he probably needs one more win for that, if I'm being honest. If he ever did get a Walker or an Ankalaev, maybe it could happen. I'm not sure he's getting that big of a fight yet. I think the more likely fight is the loser of Smith and Spann. It could even be the winner of Smith and Spann, conceivably, depending how the division shakes out above them. If they're left without a fight that makes sense, it could be Khalil. But I think one of those 2 guys would be a perfect next opponent.
Mark, staying with you, Chris Daukaus, this is the longest losing streak of his career. He has now lost 4 in a row, all by knockout, against the guys named Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, Jairzinho Rosenstrike, and now Khalil Rountree Jr. What do you think could possibly be next for Chris Daukaus, imagining he's staying at 205?
Yeah, I don't love all the knockouts. I had said last week that I thought the loser of this fight would be a good next opponent for Kennedy Nzechukwu, who also just lost. But seeing all these knockouts, I actually think I'm going to pivot slightly and not put him across from Nzechukwu, who may knock him out cold again. I mean, he could beat Kennedy too, but I'm just saying run the risk. And I'm going to go with a wrestler instead who's ranked very similarly, and I will say Devin Clark to try to keep Chris Daukaus alive here.
Yeah, please. Omar, any other thoughts on that?
Just want to point out that is Mark's way of saying that Devin Clark has pillow hands. You guys give me shit.
No, bro, no.
No, he doesn't.
It's about Nzechukwu, bro. Is that Nzechukwu is a beast.
He just is not a knockout artist like Nzechukwu is.
Well, I don't think Devin Clark will knock him out. It'll be fine. He'll be all right. He'll be good. Actually, I was actually going to put him next to Tanner Boser. I'm not really sure where.
2 former heavyweights.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where he falls here. You know, I don't think he hasn't won a fight at light heavyweight, right?
Daukaus?
Yeah.
That was his first one.
His first one.
Right. So
no.
So no.
I thought Tanner
Boser
did a really good job, I thought, in his last performance. I really did enjoy it. So I think that'd be a good fight.
Like it. Okay. Let's move on. One more fight that we're going to recap, and then we're going to hop into the lightning round here. So, on the women's side of things, here we go. Iasmin Lucindo, in the women's strawweight division, Iasmin Lucindo defeats Polyana Viana by submission via arm triangle in round number 2, the official time, 3:42 of round 2. Omar, give us your take and your thoughts of this fight that Lucindo gets it done by submission.
Dog, tell me Lucindo doesn't have shades of these bomb-dropping women that we've seen in the UFC. Like shades of the Amanda Cross, shades of the overhand of Cyborg and shit like that. Like she cracks, man. She's a little tiny human being, but she cracks. And she had Polyana like wobbling for quite some time, a couple of times in that fight. And credit to her because, you know, she survived and she fought back. And I don't think there was a moment, especially the first right hand that she ate clean that like snapped her head around. I don't think she's ever been hit like that in her life. I don't think anybody's ever put paws on her to the point where her head went back and snapped all the way back through like if she was in a goddamn Tootsie Roll commercial. I don't think anybody has done that to her. And I think it caught her off guard, and I don't think she ever really recovered from it. She tried to take it down to the ground. We did have some good ground exchanges and things like that. But Lucindo's a beast, man, and she's really well-rounded. She's very, very young. I completely missed how young she really was. And she's got massive potential. I can't even express to you the ceiling I think that girl has just based on the skills that she's shown so far. And I think the more that she fights in there, the more she's going to get better, get more comfortable. And I think we have a real superstar coming out of Brazil at this point.
Mark, your thoughts?
I'll be honest. I'm not arguing it because it's fine with me that you had that take. I don't know that I saw all that. Round one was really closely matched to me, and this is Polyana Viana, who's 4-4 in the UFC to this point. Now she's 4-5. You know, they each had a nice takedown, but neither girl could do anything in the guard of the other girl. On the feet, it was actually Viana who was sharper in round one. And then, yes, they came out for round two. Of course, Lucindo landed the huge right hand, as Omar said, spun Viana's head around. She gets the takedown shortly after. And for a second, it looked like it was going to be more nothing on the ground. Like Tagnoni started warning them. The commentary's talking about a stand-up. And then you realize that Lucindo is slipping that leg through to move into mount. And as soon as it comes free, she locks up the arm triangle, swings her body out to the side, and it doesn't take long. So that was beautiful. And I'm not knocking her in any way. As I said, the right hand was beautiful. That was beautiful. So, you know, really nice job from her. We knew she could strike. Now we see the jiu-jitsu as well. I just don't know if I got all that from her having a competitive round with Polyana Viana and then beating her in the second round. But, you know, I'm encouraged. We'll see. Maybe I'll get there.
Quickly staying with you, Mark, because I want to get to our lightning round. Women's strawweight. Who do you see matching up with Lucindo next?
Yeah, I don't think we're flying up the ranks or anything here. She's only 21. I don't think there's any reason to be catapulting her. She's 2-1 in the UFC. I think we take another small step up. I will say Piera Rodriguez, who recently got her win streak snapped by Jillian Robertson, and I think the two of them could make an exciting fight. Both can hit hard. Both can grapple. I'll go there.
Omar. Omar's like, let's go with Jessica Andrade right now.
Oh, did she lose in the UFC? I thought. Oh shit. Oh right. Duh.
Yeah,
bro,
yeah.
I can't tell you how I don't feel like anybody lost that fight. So that doesn't even cross
against
my fucking
Hadagway?
head. Yeah. I just felt like everybody won that night. Everybody.
And then her win after that was Brogan Walker, who we're not even sure yet if she's going to hang in the UFC. We'll find that out, I guess.
This is true.
This
is true.
My point is just, I think another little step is apropos.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you something actually right now, and I probably should have mentioned it before fucking Mark went. There has been an update. Well, I have this fucking thing open twice. This doesn't help anybody. Hang on now. Pulling it from the sphere. So, shocker. Cynthia Calvillo is out of her fight with Elise Reed. And like the G that she is, Iasmin Lucindo is stepping in a month's notice. So she will be fighting Elise Reed at Noche UFC, September 16th.
I'm totally fine with that. Very
120-pound catch weight, FYI.
Damn.
So she doesn't have to cut all that weight again.
Damn. Works for me.
Do you guys have anything to say about Polyana Viana, or you want to move on to the lightning round?
I want to know what the over-under is that Cynthia Calvillo gets cut again without even having had another fight. That's where I'm at with it. Because Jesus.
She hurt?
Didn't say. Just said she was out of her fight.
I'll throw a name just to close it out before we go to the lightning round. I'll say Diana Belbitsa for Viana. I feel like they are practically the same person. So let's see who's that.
Okay, our lightning round is when I challenge Mark and Omar to give us their quickest lightning takes of these fights. So no matchups, no future talk, just a quick one-sentence breakdown of this performance. Good stuff. Here we go.
So
Wait,
real quick,
God
the
damn it.
first two fights we're just gonna have Mark do it because your boy done fell asleep on the rewatch or in the watch in the first place.
Okay.
So we're gonna have Mark take the first two, and then I'm good. I got the rest.
Omar, let's do true lightning here. All right, we got a lot to get to. We can do
I'll
it.
do my best. I can do it.
Just channel like Around the Horn on ESPN. Just you have like 10 seconds.
I don't watch that.
Not
shit.
10 seconds, but yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay, catch weight 189.5 pounds. AJ Thompson gets it done over Tafan Nchukwi by UD. Mark.
Yeah, Chukwi's still a scary dude, even down at middleweight or at 189.5, which is all he could make it to. He's got some heavy, nasty kicks, but aside from having to eat a good amount of kicks, AJ Dobson did nearly everything else in this fight. Like Chukwi couldn't land in the boxing, Dobson did. He worked his own kick game. He got a few timely takedowns off of caught kicks, and he got it done. So he finally was able to show that potential that we've said we've seen in a couple of his early losses here.
Yeah, great stuff from Dobson. Another middleweight catch weight that was also 189. Josh Fremd gets the win over Jamie Pickett. Poor Jamie Pickett. Shutout on the scorecards. Every judge gave Fremd all 3 rounds. Mark.
Yeah, this was a pretty good showcase of the overall game of Josh Fremd, I would say. He can do a bit of everything. He was edging Pickett on the feet. He was able to control him in the clinch. Then you saw Pickett actually try to switch things up with the wrestling. But the problem was that once it hit the ground, it was actually Fremd who was the better grappler, so he kept reversing things. So not the most exciting win ever, but a solid all-around performance for Josh Fremd to get himself a W.
Okay, in the featured bout of the prelims now, in the bantamweight division, Marcus McGee gets the win over J.P. Bays by knockout in round number 1. Omar.
Yeah, this was some slick striking. Good performance from Marcus McGee. I love the slip. I love the counter shot. I love the timing off of it. Definitely one of those things you can watch back and over and try to learn from. It's a really good performance.
Nice. Mark.
Marcus McGee with the one-shot walk-off. What a job from him, man. He looked sharp. He was taking his time, setting little traps, getting his timing down, and it paid off because he stepped in with that little step-in right hand, and it just turned off base for a couple seconds there. And Herzog saw it, and he stopped it as he should have. I know it looked a little awkward, but he was out for a second, and Herzog caught it. So monster knockout for McGee.
Okay. In the lightweight division, T-Rex, Terrence McKinney jumps right back in the win column with a TKO victory over Mike Breeden in the very first round. Mark.
Happy to see it. He did exactly what he needed to do and then some in this fight. It helped that it seemed like Mike Breeden never really got going. I don't know. It just seemed like he wasn't ready to go. I don't know how else to say it, but I guess maybe it's just because Terrence McKinney put it on him right out of the gate. And that early push of McKinney has hurt him in the past, but thus far he's been pretty ride or die with it anyway, and it was ride on this night. So he looked like a freaking buzzsaw, and he poured it on relentlessly until the ref had enough.
Omar.
Yeah, man. I think one of the things I noticed differently in this fight more than his last previous ones, win or loss, is his attention to the body now. He focused a lot of damage to the body, a lot of knees, a lot of punches and shovel hooks to the body, and I think it really paid a difference that he's not constantly headhunting, not constantly giving away where he's trying to go for all the time. I think his evolution is great. I think he's got a good team behind him with Kevin Holland and Jamal Hill. I love Terrence McKinney. I think he's a really fun fighter, really exciting, and he's got to come back soon.
Love it. I'm team T-Rex all the way. Okay, in the featherweight division, Isaac Dulgarian defeats Francis Marshall by TKO, also in round number 1. A lot of really nice round 1 finishes on this fight night card. Omar,
awesome
go
card.
first.
Yeah, dude. I'm a big fan of Francis Marshall, so it was rough to see the beating that he ended up taking towards the end there, moving to full mount, getting his face beat in, blood everywhere. Good performance from Dulgarian, but a rough showing for Francis Marshall.
Mark.
Yeah, you got to think that went exactly according to plan for Isaac Dulgarian. It was as if how these guys talk in the little pre-fight interview that they show before the fights where it's like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to use my wrestling, take him down, land my elbows, and get him out of there. And, like, that's literally exactly what happened. Like, he leaned on the wrestling. We heard about the credentials that he has there. And he was able to do whatever he wanted without much issue. So this was one hell of a debut for Bulgarian. He busted Marshall up in that fight, and statement to put himself on the scene here.
Okay, heavyweights. Martin Buday finishes Josh Parisian by submission via Kimura in the very first round. Mark.
That was the best Martin Buday we've seen by a mile. Now, Josh Parisian also may not be long for the UFC. It's possible that was the last time that we see him. But either way, that was a hell of a showing from Buday, or Budai, however he says, I forget. But, yeah, he pushed a crazy pace, which you don't always see from him. He was clean, but made it ugly at the same time, as contradictory as that sounds. He found angles to land. And then once he hit the mat, he just really aggressively pursued that Kimura and set it up perfectly and got it done. So a nice W for him to kind of show he's ready for a step that they've been holding off on.
Omar.
Yeah, one of my main takeaways was the fact that ending sequence wasn't even initiated by him. He didn't even go for the takedown. You know what I mean? That wasn't even part of the plan at that point. He was content to strike and kind of hold his own and clinch up, and throw shots from the inside and things like that. Parisian went for a double leg, and I'm sure he's kicking himself in the ass about it now because Buday was able to push him to the side and grab a hold of his ass and grab a hold of that arm and just work. So good on Buday, man. It really was the best performance that he's ever had in the octagon.
Okay, women's strawweight Jacqueline Amorim defeats Montserrat Louise by TKO in round number 3. Omar, take it.
Yeah, it was, I mean, Ruiz is a tough woman, but she's lacking a lot of technique. There's a lot of things in there, a lot of moments in there where she's not responding the way somebody at this level should be responding, especially when it comes to the grappling and to the work on the ground. Her striking wasn't 100% great either, for that matter, but it's definitely a lot sharper, I think, than her ground game is. And it's not the first time that we've seen Ruiz not be 100% great in there at this point. But Jackie looked like a beast. Jackie, her ground game is fucking disgusting. And I think it took her a little bit longer than I expected her to take to finish this fight. And she didn't even necessarily win by submission, but she uses her jiu-jitsu to keep position and to keep that top control, I think, as much as possible, and to make sure she's not getting injured and in control. So by the time we got to the third round, she was able to kind of just get that control on top and just blast her until it was done. Can't ask for a better performance than that, honestly. Did you give her 10-8 rounds in the beginning?
Yeah. I think both, if I remember.
Both, right? Yeah. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a crazy performance from Jackie. It was a great one.
Yeah, this was the performance that matched the billing that she came into the UFC with. She fixed the cardio issues that she ran into after the first round in her debut, and now we were able to see everything that she was supposed to be. And holy hell, it was a grappling exhibition to remember. I mean, she was utterly dominant. Probably back-to-back 10-8s, as we just said, and then the finish in the third. So she is now immediately a really interesting prospect in this 125-pound division.
Okay, bantamweight division, Damon Blackshear gets it done over Jose Johnson by submission via twister in round number 1. Amazing stuff. I think it's, the third twister in UFC history. Mark, go first.
Yeah, we've known this guy has talent, but he's another one who had his best showing thus far. Obviously in the finish, but I also mean in the fight as a whole. He came out aggressive. He brought it to Johnson standing. He took it down as soon as he saw his opportunity, and he completely out-grappled Johnson once there for the third ever twister in UFC history. And Johnson didn't look bad. It'll be interesting to see him again. He looked like he had some things to offer on the feet, but this was Damon Blackshear's night.
Omar.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I thought the finish was absolutely amazing, especially to set somebody up for a twister. There's a few pieces that you need before that puzzle is complete, and guys don't usually stick around to let that happen. But Blackshear was slick about it, man. He was slick and he was quick about it and decisive about it. It was a great performance from Blackshear, and I should also mention really quick that he's actually got also a quick turnaround himself in Mario Batista. So Cody Garbrandt is out of that fight, as we've told you however long ago, and Damon Blackshear is now going to be turning around quickly and fighting this weekend against Mario Batista. So,
Yep. Crazy.
Yeah, I've never trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu myself, but from what I have gleaned, I believe a twister, while it's a devastating submission, the opponent kind of has to not know what they're defending. Am I wrong?
It's yes and no.
To give you the arm unless you can take it.
Right.
The real problem is each individual piece of the twister doesn't necessarily seem dangerous, right? Because the one part, you're just kind of lacing the leg. People have laced legs before. It's not always going to be a red flag like, fuck, this is a twister. You're just lacing the leg.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, this guy's kind of like reaching behind you like he wants to give you a hug. Now, that to me is the immediate, don't let him do that shit. Like that,
Right.
that's the red flag, is like when he wraps his arm around you, because all he's going to try to do then is reach to grab his own arm and then twist you and basically like try to snap you in half by rotating one side of your body essentially the other way, or at least keeping it positioned one way while you twist the upper body a different way.
Yeah.
But he has to get his opponent's arm behind his head, which is the
Yeah.
trickiest part.
I remember.
But thankfully for him here, Jose
when
gave it to him because he threw an elbow that, and it landed on Blackshear, but Blackshear was just like, all right, thanks for the elbow. Now your arm is back here.
I remember when Korean Zombie got the first twister against Leonard Garcia, and Leonard Garcia gave him the arm. Leonard Garcia put his arm like around him.
Yeah.
Bless Leonard Garcia's heart. He was never, we knew what Leonard Garcia was there for. That man brought us mountains of entertainment, but like
He did.
the skilled, he was not as much. Not as much.
Okay, let's bring this home. Okay, in the women's flyweight division, Luana Santos TKOs Juju Miller in the very first round. Omar.
Dog, I texted this to you guys earlier this week, but if the skill set and the execution and the talent of Juju Miller was equal or more than to the size of the dog inside of that woman, she could be champion tomorrow. Juju Miller is an absolute dog, but she takes way too many shots. She doesn't have answers for things. She really looks outclassed now in the last 2 UFC fights that she's had. And I think the only reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because she's such a dog, because she should have been knocked out after the first few strikes. Everything was landing clean. There was not a ton that wasn't landing directly on Juju Miller's face. She just was too tough for her own good. Credit to Herzog for stopping it when she did, because Juju never really went down. Like, she was up against the fence still throwing when Herzog pulled her off. So, she's a beast, man. She's a dog, but something's got to be done about her actually being able to like fight,
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, same take. Juju has what it takes mentally, but the skills just unfortunately don't match up at this point in time. We know there's some dangerous jits in her bag, but it's a matter of getting it there and of hanging on the feet until you can get it there. And as much as Miller tried to push a pace and use that to her advantage in this fight, as soon as Santos settled in, it went south. And Miller was just eating repeated fists to the face, and eventually it was enough. So good job from Santos to adjust to the heavy pressure in her debut and get a big finish, and still more work to do for Miller.
That does it, folks, for UFC Fight Night, Luque versus RDA. Going back to Hakeem Dawodu, I'm looking at his record again. You know he's undefeated in pro kickboxing? It's not a ton of fights.
I know he's had a crazy amount of fights, but I didn't know he was undefeated. That's crazy.
It looks like
it doesn't
10.
surprise me, because he seems like a point fighter. He seems like somebody who's trying to win a match and not necessarily like finish a fight.
I agree.
Yeah.